Commander Jake Sullivan walked into the biggest room he had ever seen. The walls stretched up so high that he could barely see the ceiling. Strange lights floated in the air, casting purple and blue shadows everywhere. This was the Galactic Council chamber, and Jake felt very small. 12 different alien species sat around him in a giant circle. Each one looked completely different from the others. Some had scales, others had feathers, and a few looked like they were made of living crystal. Jake had studied pictures of them before coming here, but seeing them in person was much more frightening. Captain Lisa Brooks stood next to Jake. She was his second in command and one of the best officers he knew. Her face stayed calm, but Jake could see her hands were slightly shaking. They were the first humans to ever stand in this room. The loudest voice came from Admiral Kethmore, who looked like a giant bird with bright red feathers. His species was called the Zephyrians, and they were known for having the biggest ships in the galaxy. When he spoke, his voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "So these are the humans," Kethmore said, looking down at Jake and Lisa. "I expected them to be bigger." A few other aliens made sounds that Jake guessed were laughter. The Valdorians were huge crystal beings that made deep rumbling noises when they were amused. The hive queen Zixara clicked her sharp teeth together rapidly, which was how her insect-like species showed they found something funny. In the center of the circle sat Council Prime Nexus. Unlike the others, Nexus was not made of flesh or crystal. He was pure energy trapped inside a metal shell that glowed with white light. When he spoke, his voice came from speakers built into his shell. "Humans of Earth," Nexus said. "You have asked to join our council. You want the right to protect the Outer Rim territories, but first we must see if you are strong enough." Jake stepped forward. His boots made small clicking sounds on the smooth floor. Every alien eye in the room focused on him. He had practiced this speech many times, but his mouth felt dry. "Honored Council," Jake began. "Humanity is ready to prove ourselves. We have built a strong fleet and trained our best crews. We ask for a chance to show you what we can do." Admiral Kethmore spread his huge wings, which was the Zephyrian way of showing disrespect. "Let us see these mighty human ships," he said, with a voice full of mockery. A hologram appeared in the middle of the room. It showed the UES Liberty, Earth's newest and most powerful warship. Jake felt proud looking at it. The Liberty was 800 meters long and packed with the best technology humans could build. It was beautiful and deadly. But as soon as the other aliens saw it, they started making noise again. This time the laughter was much louder. "That tiny thing," Kethmore screeched. "Our garbage ships are bigger than that." The Valdorian representative, whose name was too hard for humans to say, pounded the floor with his crystal fists. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. "We use ships that size to carry our children to school," he rumbled. Queen Zixara's mandibles clicked so fast they sounded like a machine gun. "Is this a joke? Do the humans think we are stupid?" Jake felt his face getting hot with anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. Lisa put her hand on his shoulder, reminding him to keep control. They had expected this reaction. The hologram changed to show more human ships. The destroyers, Phoenix, Ranger, and Guardian, appeared next to the Liberty. Then came the cruisers, Dakota and Nevada, followed by the support ship Mercy. Together they made up humanity's finest task force. The alien laughter got even louder. Some of the species Jake didn't recognize were making sounds he had never heard before. It was like being in a zoo where all the animals were making fun of him. 6 ships? Admiral Kethmore asked. "This is your entire fleet?" "This is the task force we prepared for the trials," Jake answered. His voice stayed steady, even though he wanted to shout at them. "Trials?" Queen Zixara clicked. "You mean the Kryn incursion test? The one where real space pirates attack with real weapons?" Jake nodded. "Yes. We volunteer to face the Kryn raiders." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then the laughter started again, but this time it sounded different. It sounded worried, like the aliens thought humans were too stupid to understand how dangerous the test was. The Kryn were vicious space pirates who attacked trade routes throughout the Outer Rim. They used big, ugly ships covered in weapons and armor. Most Council species needed dozens of huge warships to fight off a Kryn raid. The thought of 6 small human ships facing them alone seemed like suicide. "The Kryn will eat you alive," Admiral Kethmore said, but now he didn't sound as mean as before. "Their ships are 10 times bigger than yours. Their weapons can punch holes through solid rock." "We understand the risks," Lisa spoke for the first time. Her voice was clear and strong. "But we believe our ships can handle the job." Council Prime Nexus raised one metal hand to quiet the chamber. The laughter stopped immediately. "Humans," he said. "Are you certain about this choice? The Kryn show no mercy. If you fail, we cannot help you." Jake looked at Lisa, then back at the Council. "We are certain." "Very well," Nexus said. "In 3 weeks, you will meet the Kryn at the edge of the Kepler Nebula. Our observers will watch from a safe distance. If you succeed, humanity will be granted full membership. If you fail—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what happened to ships that failed against the Kryn. Admiral Kethmore stood up, his huge form casting a shadow over Jake and Lisa. "I almost feel sorry for you," he said. "Your ships are so small that one Kryn battle barge could ram through all of them at once." As Jake and Lisa walked out of the chamber, they could hear the aliens still talking about them. Most of the voices sounded like they were planning a funeral instead of a battle. "Did you see how tiny their weapons were? I heard their biggest ship has a crew of only 200 people. Our shuttles carry more than that. The poor humans don't know what they're getting into." But Jake and Lisa just smiled at each other. The aliens had no idea what human ships could really do. In 3 weeks, they would find out. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the smallest packages carried the biggest surprises. 3 weeks passed quickly. The human task force gathered at the edge of the Kepler Nebula, a huge cloud of colorful gas and dust that stretched across space like a painted canvas. 6 ships floated in perfect formation, looking tiny against the vast emptiness around them. Admiral Troy Carson stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching his crew make final preparations. The bridge was small compared to alien command centers, but every inch served a purpose. No space was wasted on fancy decorations or useless ceremonies. Everything was built for one thing: fighting. "Status report," Troy said to his officers. "Lieutenant." Amy Foster looked up from her sensor station. She was young but very smart, and Troy trusted her completely. "All ships report ready, sir. The Kryn should arrive in about 2 hours." Chief Engineer Pete Martinez wiped grease off his hands with a dirty rag. He had been working on the engines all morning, making sure they were perfect. "The quantum drives are running better than ever, Admiral. We can dance circles around anything they throw at us," Troy nodded. The quantum drives were humanity's secret weapon. While alien ships used old-fashioned engines that took time to speed up and slow down, human ships could change direction instantly. It was like the difference between a heavy truck and a sports car. Captain Dan Kelly's voice came through the radio from the UES Phoenix. "Liberty, this is Phoenix. My crew is getting excited. We've been waiting months for a real fight." "Easy, Dan," Troy replied. "Remember, we're not here to show off. We're here to prove that humans belong in the galaxy." On the other side of the nebula, the Council's observation fleet watched from what they thought was a safe distance. The Zephyrian super dreadnought Eternal Glory was so big, it looked like a small moon. Its crew of 50,000 aliens filled decks that stretched for kilometers. Commander Veltar, Admiral Kethmore's nephew, laughed as he watched the human ships through his sensors. Like his uncle, he had bright red feathers and a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "Look at them," Veltar told his bridge crew. 6 tiny ships against the entire Kryn horde. They'll be space dust in minutes." His weapons officer, a young Zephyrian named Krixtal, felt less sure. "Sir, what if the humans know something we don't?" They seemed very confident. Veltar's feathers ruffled with amusement. "What could they possibly know? Their biggest ship is smaller than our shuttle, Bay. When the Kryn arrive, you'll see how real space combat works." Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the observation deck of the Eternal Glory. listening to the alien conversations through her translation device. She was the only human in the observation fleet, sent there to study alien reactions to the battle. Helena was small and quiet, but she had spent years learning about different alien species. The Zephyrians around her kept making jokes about human ships. They talked about how the Kryn would smash through the human formation like it was made of paper. Some even started betting on how long the humans would last. Helena just smiled and said nothing. She had seen human ships in training exercises. She knew what they could do. Back on the Liberty, Troy's crew was making their own preparations. Unlike alien ships that needed hundreds of people to operate each weapon system, human ships used advanced computers to help small crews do the work of thousands. Lieutenant Foster watched her screens as patterns of data flowed past her eyes. The ship's artificial intelligence was already calculating thousands of possible battle scenarios, preparing for every situation they might face. But the AI didn't make decisions. That was still a human job. "Admiral," Foster said, "I'm picking up movement at the edge of sensor range. The Kryn are coming." Troy felt his heart beat faster, but his voice stayed calm. "All ships, this is Admiral Carson. Remember your training. Stay flexible, stay smart, and stay alive." Captain Lisa Brooks spoke from the UES Dakota. "We've been practicing for this our whole lives, Admiral. Let's show the galaxy what humans can do." The 6 human ships spread out into a formation that looked random to alien observers but was actually very carefully planned. Each ship knew exactly where the others would be at any moment. They had practiced this dance until they could do it with their eyes closed. On the Eternal Glory, the Zephyrian sensors officer suddenly made an alarmed sound. "Commander, I'm detecting hyperspace signatures. The Kryn fleet is about to arrive." Veltar leaned forward in his command chair. "How many ships?" 67 vessels, sir. It's a full war fleet." Even Veltar felt a moment of worry. 67 Kryn ships against 6 human vessels was not a battle. It was a massacre. He almost felt sorry for the brave but foolish humans. In the space, reality began to bend and twist as the Kryn fleet prepared to exit hyperspace. Hyperspace travel was violent and dangerous, and coming out of it always created spectacular light shows. The nebula around them began to glow with strange colors as dimensional barriers weakened. Troy watched the sensor readings and felt completely calm. This was what he had trained for his entire life. Every human ship captain had studied Kryn tactics for years. They knew how the pirates fought, how they moved, and most importantly, how they thought. "Kryn fleet emerging from hyperspace in 10 seconds, Foster announced. Troy opened a channel to all human ships. "This is it, people. Remember, we're not here to fight their kind of fight. We're here to fight our kind of fight." The space around them exploded with light and energy as 67 Kryn ships materialized out of hyperspace. They were ugly, brutal-looking vessels covered in spikes and weapons. The biggest one, called Death's Crown, was almost as large as the Zephyrian dreadnought watching from across the nebula. On the observation deck, Dr. Rodriguez heard the alien officers gasp in shock. Even they were impressed by the size of the Kryn fleet. Some began to make mourning sounds, already grieving for the humans they thought were about to die. But Elena just smiled wider. The aliens had no idea what they were about to see. The Kryn fleet began to move toward the human ships like a pack of hungry wolves approaching 6 rabbits. But these rabbits had very sharp teeth, and they were about to show the galaxy that sometimes the smallest hunters were also the deadliest. The Kryn fleet spread across space like a deadly swarm. 67 ships of different sizes moved forward, their hulls covered in rust and battle scars. These were not pretty vessels like the Council ships. They were built for one purpose: destroying everything in their path. War Chief Braktol stood on the bridge of Death's Crown, the biggest and ugliest ship in the fleet. His face was covered in old battle scars, and his left eye was missing. He had been fighting for 30 years and had never lost a battle. "What is this?" Braktol growled as he looked at the human ships through his view screen. 6 tiny ships? The Council sends us children to fight? His second in command, a smaller Kryn named Grakul, checked the sensor readings twice before answering. "Chief, the readings are correct. Only 6 ships and they're all very small. Braktul laughed, but it was not a happy sound. It was the laugh of a predator who had found easy prey. Then we will crush them quickly and move on to real targets. All ships attack formation. Show these humans how the Kryn fight. The Kryn fleet began to move forward in a massive wall. This was how they always fought. They would get close to their enemies, surround them, and destroy them with overwhelming firepower. It had worked against every species they had ever faced. On the Liberty, Admiral Troy Carson watched the enemy fleet approach. The Kryn ships looked terrifying, but Troy had studied them for years. He knew their weaknesses. "All ships, this is Carson," he said into his radio. "Execute Plan Delta. Phoenix and Guardian take the left side, Dakota and Nevada punch through their center. Ranger, you're with me. We're going after their biggest ship." Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her station with surprise. "Sir, we're attacking. Shouldn't we try to avoid them?" Troy smiled. "That's what they expect us to do. That's what every other species does. But we're not every other species." The human ship suddenly accelerated toward the Kryn fleet. This was not what anyone expected. In normal space battles, the smaller force would try to run away or hide, but the humans were charging straight at an enemy that outnumbered them, 10 to 1. On the Eternal Glory, Commander Veltar stared at his sensors in shock. "Are they insane? They're attacking." His weapons officer Krixtal shook his head in disbelief. "This has to be some kind of mistake. No one attacks when they're that outnumbered." Dr. Elena Rodriguez moved closer to the observation windows. She wanted to see everything that was about to happen. The alien officers around her were all talking at once, trying to understand what the humans were doing. The first human ship to reach the Kryn was the UES Phoenix, commanded by Captain Dan Kelly. The Phoenix was only 400 meters long, about the size of a Kryn escort ship. But what happened next shocked everyone watching. Instead of trading shots with the Kryn ships like a normal battle, the Phoenix began to dance. Its quantum drives allowed it to turn and stop and accelerate in ways that seemed impossible. One moment it was flying straight at a Kryn cruiser. The next it was spinning around behind it. Captain Kelly's voice was calm as he gave orders to his crew. "Target their engine section. Fire." The Phoenix's weapons were small compared to Kryn guns, but they were incredibly precise. Instead of trying to blow up the enemy ship, the Phoenix aimed for specific parts. Its first shot hit the Kryn cruiser's main engine. The second shot destroyed its weapon control center. The third shot knocked out its communication system. In just 30 seconds, the Kryn cruiser was helpless. It couldn't move, couldn't shoot, and couldn't call for help. The Phoenix had turned a deadly enemy into floating junk without destroying it completely. "Impossible," Braktul roared as he watched one of his best ships get taken apart. "How can something so small move like that?" His question was answered when the UES Guardian, commanded by Captain Rita Hayes, showed up on his other side. The Guardian was even smaller than the Phoenix, but it moved through the Kryn formation like water flowing around rocks. Captain Hayes had been a fighter pilot before commanding starships, and it showed. She flew the Guardian like it was a tiny fighter instead of a warship. Kryn gunners tried to target her, but she was always somewhere else by the time they fired. "This is impossible," Grakul said as he watched 3 more Kryn ships get disabled by the dancing human vessels. Their ships are too small to have that much power, but the humans were far from finished. The UES Dakota and UES Nevada came charging through the center of the Kryn formation like bullets. Instead of trying to fight every ship they met, they aimed for the most important targets. Captain Lisa Brooks commanded the Dakota with cold precision. She had studied Kryn battle tactics and knew exactly which ships were giving orders to the others. While the enemy was distracted by the Phoenix and Guardian, she systematically destroyed the Kryn command ships. "Target the ship with the big antenna," she told her weapons officer. "That's their communications hub." The Dakota's guns spoke once, and the Kryn communication ship exploded in a ball of fire. Suddenly, half the Kryn fleet couldn't talk to the other half. War Chief Braktul felt panic for the first time in decades. His fleet was falling apart and he didn't understand how. The human ships were too small and too fast. Every time his gunners aimed at one, it was already somewhere else. "All ships, Focus fire on the biggest human vessel, he shouted into his radio, but only half his ships could hear him. The UES Liberty and UES Ranger had been waiting for this moment. Admiral Carson and Captain Tom Wilson had positioned their ships perfectly. When the Kryn fleet tried to focus on them, they were ready now, Carson said quietly. Both ships activated their quantum drives at exactly the same time. For a moment, they seemed to flicker like ghosts. Then they vanished completely. On the observation deck of the Eternal Glory, the alien officers made sounds of amazement and fear. Ships didn't just disappear in the middle of a battle. Where did they go? Veltar demanded. Dr. Rodriguez pointed at the sensor displays. They're not gone. They're right there, inside the Kryn formation. The Liberty and Ranger had done something that should have been impossible. They had jumped through space itself, appearing in the middle of the enemy fleet like magic. Now they were right next to Death's Crown, Braktul's flagship. Hello there, Admiral Carson said as he opened a communication channel to the Kryn leader. Surrender now and we'll let your crews live. Braktul's scarred face turned white with fear and rage. In 30 years of fighting, no one had ever gotten this close to his ship without him knowing. These tiny human vessels had just appeared next to him like ghosts made of metal and fire. The battle was far from over, but already the galaxy was learning something new. Size didn't matter nearly as much as skill, speed, and intelligence. Humans were about to teach everyone a lesson they would never forget. War Chief Braktul stared at the two human ships that had appeared next to his flagship like ghosts. His hands shook as he reached for his weapon controls. In 30 years of raiding, nothing like this had ever happened to him. How? He whispered. How did you get here? Admiral Troy Carson's voice came through the communication system, calm and steady. We're not like the other species you fight, Braktul. We don't believe that bigger is always better. The Kryn leader snarled and fired every weapon on his ship, at the Liberty. Massive energy beams and explosive missiles filled the space between the two vessels. Any normal ship would have been destroyed instantly. But the Liberty wasn't there anymore. The human ship flickered and moved like it was dancing, its quantum drives bending the laws of physics. Every shot that should have hit it missed by inches. Meanwhile, the Liberty's own weapons fired back with surgical precision. Captain Tom Wilson on the Ranger had positioned his ship on the other side of Death's Crown. While Braktul was focused on the Liberty, Wilson's crew was carefully taking apart the flagship's weapon systems one by one. Target their main gun, Wilson told his weapons officer. Put it out of action, but don't destroy the whole ship. We want prisoners, not corpses. The Ranger's precise shot hit the Kryn flagship's biggest weapon right in the power coupling. The huge gun went dark and dead. Then another shot disabled the missile launchers. A third shot knocked out the shield generators. Within minutes, the most feared ship in the Kryn fleet was helpless. It could barely move and couldn't fight back at all. Across the battlefield, the other human ships were finishing their work. The Phoenix had disabled 12 enemy vessels by dancing around them and hitting their most important systems. The Guardian had taken out the Kryn's remaining communication ships, leaving most of the fleet unable to coordinate their attacks. The Dakota and Nevada worked together like a perfect team. Captain Lisa Brooks would identify the most dangerous enemy ships, then both vessels would focus their fire to disable them quickly and efficiently. What amazed the alien observers was that the humans weren't trying to destroy their enemies. Instead, they were carefully taking each ship apart, leaving the crews alive but unable to fight. Chief Engineer Pete Martinez on the Liberty called out damage reports. Admiral, we've taken some hits, but nothing serious. Hull is at 96%, all systems green. Troy nodded. The human ships had been designed to take punishment while staying fast and maneuverable. They were like boxer who could take a punch and keep fighting. All ships, status report, Troy requested. One by one, the human captains reported in. Despite facing a fleet 10 times their size, not one human ship had been seriously damaged. They had fought the entire Kryn horde and barely gotten scratched. On the observation deck of the Eternal Glory, the alien officers stood in stunned silence. Commander Veltar's beak hung open as he watched the impossible battle. They did it, he whispered. 6 tiny ships defeated an entire Kryn war fleet. His weapons officer Krixtal shook his head in disbelief. Sir, how is this possible? The human ships are so small. Their weapons are so light. By all the laws of space combat, they should be dead. Dr. Elena Rodriguez finally spoke up. She had been quiet through the whole battle, but now she wanted to explain what the aliens had witnessed. Your laws of space combat are wrong, she said, simply. You all think that bigger ships with bigger guns always win, but humans learned something different. The Zephyrian officers turned to look at her. Veltar's feathers were ruffled with confusion and embarrassment. What did you learn? He asked. Elena smiled. We learned that in space, speed and intelligence beat size and power every time. Our ships are small because small ships can move faster, turn quicker and hide better. Our weapons are precise because precise shots disable enemies without wasting energy. She pointed at the view screen where the human ships were now helping the disabled Kryn crews. We also learned that showing mercy makes you stronger, not weaker. Those Kryn pirates will go home and tell everyone that humans are dangerous but fair. Some of them might stop being pirates altogether. War Chief Brachtel's voice came over the communication channels, speaking to Admiral Carson. The proud Kryn leader sounded defeated and confused. I surrender, he said, but I do not understand. Your ships are toys compared to mine. How did you win? Troy's answer was gentle but firm. Because we didn't try to fight like you, Brachtel. We fought like humans. Every species in the galaxy builds bigger and bigger ships, thinking that size equals strength. But humans learned long ago that the best fighter isn't always the biggest one. The Liberty moved closer to Death's crown. Through the view screen, Brachtel could see Admiral Carson standing on his small bridge. The human commander looked calm and relaxed like he had just finished an easy training exercise. Your ships are so fast, Brachtel said, and your weapons are so accurate. How? Practice, Troy replied. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We learned to make every shot count because we couldn't afford to waste ammunition. We learned to move fast because standing still meant death. We learned to work together because lone fighters don't survive. Across the nebula, the Council observation fleet was sending urgent messages back to the Galactic Council chambers. The impossible had happened. Humanity had not just survived the Kryn test, they had passed it perfectly. The human ships began rescue operations immediately. The UES Mercy, their support vessel, moved through the disabled Kryn fleet providing medical aid and humanitarian assistance. Even their enemies were treated with kindness and respect. Captain Dan Kelly's voice came over the human communication network. Admiral, we have about 3,000 Kryn survivors who need medical attention. The Mercy can handle most of them, but we might need help. Contact the observation fleet, Troy ordered. Ask if they can spare some medical ships. These prisoners are now under our protection. This final act amazed the alien observers more than the battle itself. The humans had just defeated their enemies, but now they were risking their own resources. To save Kryn lives, Commander Veltar found himself giving orders to prepare medical ships for the Kryn survivors. As he worked, he realized something important had changed. He no longer thought of human ships as toys or jokes. He thought of them as the most dangerous vessels in the galaxy. When the rescue operations were finished, Admiral Carson opened a channel to the observation fleet. This is Admiral Carson to all Council observers. The trial is complete. Humanity requests formal acceptance into the Galactic Council. There was a long pause before Commander Veltar replied. When he spoke, his voice was full of respect. Admiral Carson, I think I speak for everyone here when I say that humanity has more than earned its place among us. Your ships may be small, but your courage and skill are greater than any of us imagined. As the human task force prepared to return home, Troy looked around his small bridge at his crew. Lieutenant Foster was already plotting their course back to Earth. Chief Martinez was checking the engines one more time. Everyone looked tired but proud. Good work, everyone, Troy said. We just changed how the galaxy thinks about warfare. And more importantly, we showed them that humans keep their promises. The 6 small human ships formed up and jumped to hyperspace. leaving behind a battlefield full of disabled but living enemies and a group of alien observers who would never underestimate Earth again. In council chambers across the galaxy, the message was clear. Size didn't matter. Intelligence, speed, precision, and honor. Those were the things that won battles and earned respect. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.